Hey YouTube fam, it's Francina Simone, and today we're going to talk about sexism in YA. In my last video, I talked a lot about how romance might be ruining fantasy because of how convoluted it is in young adult and how a lot of times the story structure doesn't seem to know what it is. And one of my suspicions is because of the sexism that revolves around romance. So I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that it is known that the majority of romance readers are women. I don't think that's a surprise. And I also don't think it's a surprise to anyone to know that romance is often shitted on a lot, like most things that women like. And so it's not a surprise in young adult that books that feature heavy romance plots are usually geared towards girls and often thought of as lesser than their equal counterparts that are adventure fantasies or books for boys. Now, I'm not 100% sure how I feel completely about this topic. I feel like it's a deep topic that has a lot of cultural and societal issues that really just make it convoluted. But here's just a few things that I've noticed and some things that I've been questioning myself when it comes to romance and young adult and how it's marketed. First, I want to talk about how Twilight changed the game when it came to romance, in YA specifically. After Twilight hit the shelves and became a huge thing, a lot of other genres started picking up romances as its main plot line. So you got a lot of books that really focused on the romance as much as it did, say, the adventure that they were going on. Like The Mortal Instruments. I just finished reading City of Bones not too long ago, and one of my main issues was that Clary, who is a bland character, so it's very hard to know what she's thinking half the time anyways, but one of my issues was there's a romance going on with her and Jace, obviously. It's not too heavy, and I think it does it well for what it does. But I often stop to think, girl, there's important stuff going on in your world, and yet you keep, idly thinking about this boy. We're spending a lot of page time on her thoughts about this guy Jace and not enough page time on her thoughts about, I don't know, being a normal girl all of a sudden dumped into a world full of demons. I expect some post-traumatic stress. I expect something. I expect her to have a wig out moment. I expect her to be like, oh, Jesus, no! I expect her to have feelings about that, but instead she seems to have more feelings about Jace. Now, the issue isn't that she has feelings about Jace. It's the amount of time spent on that versus the amount of time spent on her other feelings. And I think it's just an issue with Clary being kind of bland. She doesn't have thoughts in general. So it's kind of a big ask for her. But then we come into contact with books like this. Selena Sardothian is a very voicey character and she has a lot of thoughts and opinions. And this is a book that is marketed as not really a romance. Nothing about this speaks romance. However, the majority of the page time spent in this book is spent on the romance. So it's interesting to me where then you look at books like Poison Study. This is, this is Magic Study. But the first book in the series, which is on the back here too, so I'll show you guys. The first book in the series is Poison Study, and you can kind of see the cover here. It's pretty much the same as this cover, just green, and she's laying on the grass instead or something. The first in this book is about a girl who is sentenced to death, but instead of that, she decides to become the Poison Master's apprentice and be the poison taster for the commander. And so she undergoes a lot of poison tasting and learning poisons, and most of that is spent being poisoned. And a part of the story does have a romantic subplot. And I would call it a romantic fantasy, considering that the relationships, because it's a political intrigue as well, play a heavy part of the story, so that the romance does build alongside everything. I really did enjoy Poison Study, by the way, and I do want to go on reading the series. So for me, it's very interesting that this is the cover. It screams romance. But then at the same time, why does Girl with Dreamy Eyes scream romance? Why doesn't it scream, what the fuck? Why does this sell romance? Why is it that since there's a girl, I automatically think romance? Which brings me to believe that I've been playing into the patriarchy. But then at the same time, what's the problem with seeing a girl and it screaming romance? Which leads me to believe that I am still playing into the patriarchy. But aside from my existential crises surrounding the topic, I still wonder about the packaging of both of these. The amount of page time spent on the romance isn't nearly as much as the page time spent on the romance in this book. This one focuses more on the girl's day-to-day life, the political intrigue. It is consistent tension of what is happening. Whereas in Throne of Glass, I don't feel the constant tension. Most of the time, she's very flippant about things. And she spends a lot of time fawning over guys me being petty with other chicks, and in general thinking about dresses. So it's very interesting to me how they chose to market these two different books. Obviously they thought only girls would like this, so they marketed it as a romance, and maybe because it's an epic fantasy that does go on for quite some time, they wanted male readers, so they marketed more as an epic fantasy, even though there's lots of romance. So I don't know how I feel about that. I just know that I don't like it. I'm having a lot of strange questions. I love romance in general, but I'm not sure I like the way that it's marketed. And I also don't not like the way that it's marketed. I think that it should be marketed in some ways like this, but I feel like it's always marketed like this, and that's the problem. I don't know. I'm feeling things that I don't like feeling. In general, I do think that romances shouldn't be shat on. They're fun, and they're fun for everyone. Well, a lot of people tend to like romance, since a lot of people tend to partake into romance in some way or another. Not everyone, but the majority of people. And I think by shitting on it, we tend to try to hide what a book is, like Throne of Glass. It seems like it's hiding what it is really, which is kind of weird because the majority of readers for Throne of Glass are girls who do enjoy romance. Hence all of the big shipping culture in Throne of Glass. Like, I think, there's a ship for every goddamn character in that book. And so it tells me that the readers who enjoy it for what it is, not for necessarily what it was marketed as. And usually the people who don't like it because it was marketed as something else, and they don't like the romance aspect, right? So why not just market that book as a romance? However, I will say that the original packaging for Throne of Glass, there was like this Sarah J. Maas lookalike with like a dagger on her arm, and she was all like, dreamy. And so like they got rid of it eventually and repackaged them. So obviously they did try going that route, but then I don't know why they switched up the marketing on it. I think that these are better. They're more interesting to look at. But I think I would like the cover with a blurb that hints more at the romance aspect of the book. Or just maybe just in general, I think my issue with Throne of Glass is it's not tight as in the writing. I think the first two books could have been like cut up a lot and combined into one, and I really would have enjoyed that. So that might be my overall gripe with Throne of Glass. But I do wonder why that book was hidden from romance, especially when Sarah J. Maas is such a big romance writer. I mean, like her other series, we all know she be liking the romance, because if you read past book 4 in Throne of Glass and read her other series, you know that she be liking it. So I do find that really funny in general. I find it interesting. But I think the more that we mismarket romance, the more we take away from people who like it in general. So I don't know how I feel completely about it. I feel like this topic really bothers me because I can't figure out exactly what I dislike and a solution that I would like to see, and that always bothers me. But I kind of want to know what you guys think about the topic. How do you feel about how romance novels are marketed? And I mean like in YA, not the like adult ones where they're like man half naked and a woman all like, ah. I want to know what you guys think about romance and how it's portrayed in YA and how it's marketed in YA. And let me know your experiences with it. Like, do you like when a book has a girl on the cover and it looks clearly romantic? Do you pick that up? Or do you like it when it hints at other elements, even though the romance takes up most of the page? Let me know down below. Make sure to like and subscribe. And of course, remember guys, I upload on Tuesdays at 2 and Saturdays at 10. So I will see you then. TTYL, to talk for now. Bye.